So we are live on air, so I wanted to welcome everyone. I'm Mary Ellen Kramer, Senior Health Educator here at Hamilton County Public Health. Thank you for joining us today for our Crime Prevention Through Environmental Design. I'm excited that Ellen Berninger is going to be joining us she's a health educator with the Cincinnati Health Department and focuses a lot on active living. So this is kind of right up her alley, and so she is going to share with us kind of this crime prevention through environmental design model and give ideas for communities in terms of how you might take something from today and implement that back in your community. Within the chat box, you should see a link. If you're at a computer and want to download that, it's a one-page overview for this kind of crime prevention through environmental design model, and we'll be sharing that out after the webinar as well. So we will be taking questions at the end, and we'll kind of unmute everyone so that you have the ability to ask questions throughout the webinar. If you have any questions or have technical difficulties, feel free to type a message in the chat box. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Ellen.
Perfect. Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us. I'm really excited to be here today. As Mary Ellen said, I'm Ellen with the Cincinnati Health Department, and I work a lot in active living, as she said. I'm part of the Creating Healthy Communities program, and we focus on active living, healthy eating, tobacco-free living, and then, of course, an evaluation portion to make sure that we're keeping up with our goals and doing good things. And this is a program that comes to us from the Ohio Department of Health, and actually it's spread out among several counties in Ohio, so if you're ever traveling around the state, you might come across some other Creating Healthy Communities neighborhoods. But the reason I really got into this crime prevention through environmental design was through my work in active living, and as we talk to folks about, getting outside and being active and even just spending time outdoors and how good that can be for you, both physically and mentally, and crime really just kept coming up as an issue that folks were kind of concerned about crime in their neighborhood and really wanted to do things because they know that the police are certainly there and they're around and they're doing what they can, but we all want to kind of take part and really make our neighborhood the best that we can. So we'll kind of start with the overview of what exactly is crime prevention through environmental design. And the first thing is, we'll make it easier on all of us here, is crime prevention through environmental design is really quite a mouthful. So it's been shortened down to this wonderful little acronym that's pronounced CPTED. So probably for the rest of the presentation, I'll be referring to it as CPTED, and you'll know that what I'm talking about is sort of this school of thinking. And when I first learned about it, I really kind of fell in love with it because it is a holistic approach to crime prevention. So as I mentioned, when we think of crime, kind of the first thing folks think of is the police, and we need the police. And certainly they are great. They can be our partners. They have a wonderful job, but we also know that they're very busy. And there are a lot of things that we can do in our neighborhoods, as you'll see coming up, to kind of just do what we can to deter crime and really kind of build a nice community at the same time. A lot of the things we're going to talk about really visually improve your community and make it so that when folks aren't doing the right thing or doing good things, it's noticeable, and they know that it's noticeable, so they might go somewhere else, or maybe just hopefully decide not to do it at all, but at least not in your community, because they'll know that folks are looking out and taking care of their community and want to keep it nice. There is actually an international CPTED association, so this isn't something we're just making up. This is something that they do all over the world, in Australia and London and South America. And I wanted to kind of share this quote because I really liked it. And it says, CPTED strategies rely upon the ability to influence offender decisions that precede criminal acts by affecting the built, social, and administrative environment. And what I really love is it's about that it says preceding criminal acts. So again, often we think of crime prevention. Oh my gosh, there's going to be a crime, we better call the police. Or they look like they're about to commit a crime, let's call the police and prevent it that way. And this really takes a couple steps back from that, and we really, again, try and proceed. Even the decision of somebody making that choice that they want to commit a crime. so that we're really kind of just building a nice community where people don't even want to commit crimes, which I think is really exciting. So what we're going to be going over today, and if you've downloaded the overview, you'll see these on there, these 10 points, but if not, it's okay, just follow along. I'm going to talk a little bit about each one of these points and some things that we can do within our own communities. So these strategies include natural surveillance, natural access management, territorial reinforcement, physical maintenance, order maintenance, activity support, social capital, land use and community design, target hardening, and natural imperatives. And as you'll see when we go through them, some of them sort of overlap and have very similar themes and ideas, but I really liked the way kind of these were broken down and allows you to apply it in a number of different settings. So if you all are ready, we'll go ahead and we'll get started here with our first of the 10 key principles with natural surveillance. So the first thing we'll do is we'll talk about what it is. And what natural surveillance is the design and placement of physical features to maximize visibility and surveillance. Because as you can imagine, if you're going to commit a crime, you're not going to want anybody to watch you commit that crime. So some of the things you can do here, if you look at the picture in the upper right-hand corner, in the before photo, you can see there's a house there. Maybe that's your house or your neighbors, or you know houses like this in your community, where a lot of the brush is overgrown. The bushes might be really tall, or the trees might hang kind of low. And what that says is if I'm walking down the sidewalk, I know that you can't really see me. So even if you're home with your lights on, it still kind of turns it into an empty street corner. Where if you then go ahead and look towards the after photo, some of that has been trimmed up. Usually they say bushes, 3 or 4 feet high, but depending on where your windows are, you could adjust that just depending for your house. But what you really want to do is make sure that you can really see outside, and so not only does it let you see outside, but also when you have your lights on or things, it kind of can project that light out onto the street and just make it seem like a friendlier place. So then when you're talking to your folks in your community, because we all want to do our part, but we want to have sort of the businesses in the community support us as well. This is one of my favorite examples, and it's a pretty classic one of sort of maybe if you have a local corner store or, some shops that sell the chips and soda, things like that, is very frequently they will have a lot of posters or sometimes even boards kind of covering their windows. And I know when talking to folks that own these kind of shops, they say, if I don't put up these boards, people throw rocks through my window, or, just sometimes it is just advertisements and they kind of don't really think twice about it. But again, you can see that first photo is kind of in the evening, and you can see the lights are on inside the store, but the street is still very dark, where you can imagine if they were to just remove all those posters, how bright and well lit that street corner would be, and it would really look a lot friendlier than it does. And you can kind of see what that could look like over on the picture on the right, where the windows are very clear. So not only can folks see in, so it can also be a benefit for the management of the store, because in that first one, they could be being held up right now, and none of us would know because we have no idea what's going on inside that store, where it would be very easy for us to see and call the police in the store on the right. But also gives them, the store employees, the opportunity to look out on the street. You can see who's coming, who's going, and really just what's going on in the neighborhood. So that's a really kind of simple example that you can share with folks in your community. Went too far. There you go. Okay, so the next one, and I think this is a fun one, is natural access management. This is the physical guidance of people and vehicles. So again, something you can do at your home, and this kind of overlaps with the previous natural surveillance, is when you're out there kind of trimming your bushes and your lawn, is really creating an obvious entranceway to your home. If you look at the house up on the right, that might be Miss Nancy's house, maybe, or it's your house or your neighbor's, and if you were going to go up there, or you were seeing someone walk up to her home, it's very obvious where they should be walking to. There's a gate with 2 bows on the side. Now, certainly it doesn't have to be this fancy a sidewalk or even simple landscaping or pots or just a trimmed path, somewhat through the yard. But really, what it does is that if we see someone hopping the fence on the other side and walking through the landscaping up to the front porch, we're going to probably stop and think, because we're going to think that's kind of odd. Why did they not just walk up the front gate where Miss Nancy's sitting inside and can see? And so it would just make it obvious if someone wasn't kind of following the social norms of walking up the front gate. So it just kind of helps to point out when things are maybe seeming a little fishy. And it's sort of a similar concept that you could share with businesses or parks in your neighborhood. So if we look at the park on the left, they have some fencing there. And the one thing I do want to caution is that the one thing this isn't about is just putting up lots of like fences and things everywhere. You'll see even up top where we have the little fence, it's somewhat shorter. Big privacy fences and things like that really are against, don't flow with the purpose of CPTED, because what we really want to do is create a lot of visibility and really friendliness in your neighborhood, where if you kind of put up those big fences, you can't always see what's going on the other side, and it could be criminal activity. But what I like about this one is it is a fence. It's not necessarily locking. It's a place where you would kind of walk behind that front piece and then into the entrance. And all that does is kind of slow folks down, and it, again, keeps an eye out of folks are going here and they're kind of following the rules to get in. Where if we see someone climbing over the fence, again, that's going to stick out as, wait a minute, what's going on here? Why didn't they come to the sort of the main entrance? Were they trying to sneak in and be unnoticed? Or even at the business on the right. If you were going up to the front door, again, you would expect folks to kind of follow this path. And it would make it obvious if we saw someone go over and stand behind this tree on the right and then kind of go stand behind that other tree further back, and then suddenly they were behind those bushes over there, we would say, that's strange, because obviously the path leads us right to the front door. So a lot of what this is about is just kind of creating obvious places where people kind of should be going, or things that people that weren't causing trouble or didn't have any criminal intentions, that the rest of us wouldn't have any trouble following. Like, oh, I'm going to the front door, I'll likely, just walk down the path. And so it just makes it makes non-compliance obvious when people aren't kind of just following the standard rules. It gives us a reason to maybe pop up and think twice. Now, certainly there will be reasons why someone might occasionally walk through the grass or whatnot, so we shouldn't just call the police on everybody that strays off the sidewalk. But again, just something to sort of give us notice. Okay, this next one, territorial reinforcement. It sounds kind of scary, but I think we can make it friendly. And territorial reinforcement is the use of physical attributes to delineate space and express a positive sense of ownership. So first, when you're looking at your home, and certainly this home, the picture on the left-hand side of the screen, they really did a lot, and I certainly wouldn't say you have to build a whole new patio and wall and all that kind of stuff. But really, you can use just landscaping, or just even trimming the grass, the edges of the grass that hang over the sidewalk, or just even really maintaining your lawn or whatever kind of landscaping you have, or even if it's gravel or some kind of a wall. Really, it just shows that I'm not hiding inside my house. This is my yard, and I'm loving all of it. I'm taking care of all of it. So if you're planning on sneaking in, or whatever, I'm not just cowering inside, whatever. I'm enjoying my space, and I might walk out my door at any minute, and this is my space, and I care for it. And that kind of sends that message that if you're in it, I'm going to notice, and I'm going to question why you're in it. Why are you in my space? It doesn't always have to be unfriendly, but certainly if someone you didn't know wandered into your yard, you might say, hi, what are you doing here? So just kind of expressing that sense of ownership, that it doesn't look abandoned, it doesn't look like whatever, nobody cares, nobody's ever going to come to this corner of the yard. I can set up shop here and do as I please. And then certainly it's a similar thought for community. And this picture of the gas station up on the top right, it actually is a closed down gas station, but I know in my community, and I know you probably know in your community as well, there are buildings that look like this that are open for business every day, and you and yet they still maintain this level of, I don't even know how to say it, unprettiness, I guess we can say, where you kind of can't tell where does the street and the sidewalk and the parking lot end, and is anybody really in there? Are they doing something? If I set up shop on this corner by the sign, is that far enough? And they're not really going to care what I do, because obviously they don't care about their space at all, so I can do what I want here. So this is something you can encourage your businesses, and depending on how much, folks want to put into it, certainly something like a grassy curb would be a beautiful addition, just to say, this is our parking lot, this is part of the business. Again, we care about our property, and not just our little space, but we care about what's happening on all corners of our property, all the way out to the edges. The concrete barriers that you can park up against, even something like that, creating sort of a nice, orderly barrier around the parking lot could sort of help to delineate their space. Like, yes, this is our space. Again, yes, we own it, and yes, we care for it. Murals are a great option that might cost a little less depending on where you get them from or who's doing them for you, but often community groups, maybe schools, summer art camps, things like that, would probably be willing to partner with a community and put up something like that. I mean, that gas station there would be much prettier if it had a nice mural on the side, and again, that shows we really care about this building, and if you do something to it, we're going to prosecute, or we're going to call the police, or we're going to do something, because we don't want you to get away with it, because this is ours and we care about it. Signage can even help. So even with a park, rather than just having a blank square of grass with some plants that you might know as a park, but even just really identifying it as a park and not just sort of a random area, can kind of show that sense of community ownership that can make folks think twice. Because again, if it's a real place in the community, that signifies that people might show up there. People might show up wanting to use the park, and that's going to kind of interrupt their criminal activity or whatever they're choosing to do there. Okay, so physical maintenance, and this kind of follows on the trail of that, is once you kind of establish that ownership of your yard, or even another way to kind of show, is keeping things nice. So physical maintenance, the repair, replacement, and general upkeep of a space, building, or area. So things that you can do at home. So even if you've, taking care of your lawn, whatever, but if you've got all kinds of toys, or maybe you put the trash cans out and you never bring them back in, that might send a signal to someone that, again, you're not outside often, so maybe they can hang out in front of your house or hang out on your street corner, because it doesn't look like you're coming out anytime soon to look at your front yard or to kind of engage with the things going on in your community. So even just keeping your yard neat and keeping your landscaping neat can be a deterrent, because again, it looks like you might come out at any time, because obviously someone's out here taking care of things, and they just don't want to get caught. So keeping your house upkept, it can be a real deterrent to criminals. And again, similar with businesses, a well-striped parking lot can be a great deterrent. And that's something that's maybe not too expensive. In that gas station we saw previously, again, that could have been a great option for them. Oh, this is freshly painted, and it kind of creates order. There aren't just cars parked everywhere, like we're all going to park next to each other and have a party, or I know there's lots of strange things going on around the city now where we see cars parking and pulling up next to each other and handing things through the window, where this kind of makes that obvious, because it says this is where you should be. And again, it's not something where it's so harsh that the rest of us law-abiding folks would have any trouble. Certainly when you pull into a parking lot, I'm sure you probably pull into a parking space and it's no big deal. But to someone who's kind of looking to do their own thing, again, it just looks like somebody's paying attention, somebody's taking care of the space. I'd rather go somewhere where it looks like there's nobody around. And trash cans can signal that as well. So if at your local park or on the street corner, or again, maybe outside of a business or something, if the trash cans are overflowing, which I know that happens, I see that often in my neighborhood, again, that sends a signal that, is somebody looking? Because something's wrong here, and maybe it's not trash day, but there's nobody watching to come by and help clean it up, or call the city or call maintenance and say, hey, we need to empty this. So again, just another sign kind of that we're not paying attention to what's happening in our neighborhood. Okay, order maintenance. The attention to minor violations and reduction of opportunities for inappropriate behavior. This one is important. So if you experience vandalism in your home, like if somebody knocks over your mailbox, or somebody knocks on your fence, or pulls up your plants, or spray paints graffiti on your wall, it is important to file a police report, or do something if you can, if it's something of that magnitude, or at least repair it to the best of your ability, so that when those criminals or teenagers or whoever they were drive by again and they say, we spray painted that house or that fence last week and now it's already gone, that wasn't really worth our time. Somebody was paying attention, so man, we could have almost gotten caught. Again, just really sending that message that you are looking out for your property, and that you will not accept this kind of activity. And it's same in your community. Posting rules is a great way. Again, just simple things. It doesn't have to be anything crazy, but you can kind of see the park rules sign: no loud music, no alcoholic beverages. Things, again, that make non-compliance obvious. So those folks that just aren't interested in really being an upstanding part of our community, it might give us a reason to say, hey, it's obvious that you're doing something in this area that is not appropriate. Just maybe you could go somewhere else, or just not do it. Or they might say, they just might not think of it, like, oh, if it's, again, an abandoned park, let's go there and have our own party and we'll play our own music. But again, this looks like, oh, somebody's watching out for this park and there are rules, and therefore it gives somebody the opportunity to punish me or call the police or say something. So it just gives them that extra bit of thought that, again, somebody's looking out for this area. And similar with graffiti. And if you can find the folks that did it, having them paint over it themselves or something, just to kind of really show, like, we're not going to accept this. I know in New York City, I think this was kind of a big deal. Back in the early days, I couldn't tell you the dates, but New York City, I know for a while, went through a period where it really wasn't the kind of glamorous, clean, maybe somewhat even family-friendly place it might be today. And what was said was, they said, we really need to start cracking down on some of these smaller things, because, it's really not a big deal if someone pulls up your plant, you can replant it, or sometimes if somebody, you could easily repaint a fence or even a wall. But it gives folks the idea that, well, if they're willing to accept these small things and let them slide, maybe they'll be willing to accept something a little bit bigger and let that slide. And then from there, maybe even a little bit bigger and let that slide. So by just not tolerating small offenses, and again, this doesn't have to be any type of crazy punishment. We don't want all of our teenagers being arrested and put in jail, but just sort of by giving out that thought that we really don't want to tolerate these smaller crimes, we're definitely not going to tolerate anything more serious either. Okay, activity support. This is one of my favorite ones because there are just so many millions of things you can do with it. And for folks in the community, I think this is something you can really get behind, because it doesn't necessarily involve having to improve any of your property or having businesses improve their property. So you can do this without any cost, and I really like that. And you can do it over and over again in so many different ways. And activity support is the planning and placement of safe activities, which, again, really what this is the principle that the more people that are out in the street doing good things, the less people are out on the street doing bad things. Because there's a reason why criminals don't usually come right into the middle of a crowded area and conduct their business right in front of everyone. So lots and lots of things you can do. Even just at home, especially now, this is the perfect time of year. Sit outside on your stoop and enjoy the weather. If you've got a porch, that's great. If you've got stairs, even a yard, throw out a blanket. It's a great opportunity to kind of connect with your neighbors, or even just kind of see what's going on in the neighborhood, which I know I love to do. I love to sit and just watch all the people and what they're doing going up and down my street. And you do kind of get to know things. So again, it makes it obvious, like, oh, I've never seen these people before. This might be strange. Just to keep an eye out. Again, strange things will happen, and some of them will probably be totally innocent and fine. But it's just kind of lets you know what's going on in your neighborhood. Other things you can do are hold open streets events. Open streets are very cool if you want to do something a little bit bigger, if you've got a little more energy you want to put into it. Often you can contact your local police department and even ask if they would close down a portion of the street. If in your neighborhood there's maybe the main street of the business district if you wanted to, or it could even be a side street or the street in front of the school, something like that, and actually have them close it down and have some sort of a celebration. So again, even if it was the street in front of the school, have all the kids come out at the, during a school day or something, and even do, jump rope and hopscotch and things like that, and really reclaim the street for pedestrians and get folks out and about. Now, certainly you want to talk to folks that the street isn't always going to be closed, so you can't always go out and play in the middle of the street, but it gets people used to sort of being outside. And a lot of folks say, wow, that was really fun, that was really nice, how can we do it again? And maybe we say, okay, well, we can't certainly close down the street every week, even though in some cities they do. I want to say it's in South America. They actually have like a 6-mile stretch of a main road that they close down every Sunday for like this big party, and it's just become a huge thing. And it just started with one small event, and folks love it. But you can always translate it into something else, like, oh, you love being outside. Well, you can turn it into walking clubs or even an annual community festival. You can usually get your local businesses or call the fire department. Sometimes they'll bring a fire truck out or something, something simple. It doesn't have to be too elaborate or cost a lot of money, but those can be really popular events. And just talk to people about how important it is to be outdoors. It's great for your mental health. It's great for your physical health, especially children. I mean, it's great for your vision, for everything. So I just can't say enough good things about this. Anything that you can think of that gets folks out on the street, even if you're part of a women's club or even at a church or something like that, talk to whoever's in charge about having a service outside or having a meeting outside in a public area, especially if you do have a park or a town square. Again, just to really get people outside. And sometimes if someone's never been to that park before, that maybe your church or, again, your club is having a meeting there, and you go because, okay, I'm going for this, but then you get there and you say, oh, this wasn't that far. The parking was easy, or it was nice. That was so easy to walk from home. I'm going to come back here and start doing that. And that's where we really start to build kind of those healthy communities and really have people outside. And that leads right into my next one, which is social capital. Social capital, the social trust, norms, and networks people draw upon to solve common problems, foster civic engagement, and discourage inappropriate behaviors. So again, this is one, it blends right into that activity support, and it's all about really getting to know the people in your community and in your neighborhood, so that sometimes if someone isn't there, often people are coming from outside of your neighborhood to commit crimes. Or it's just better, you can really just know what's going on and knowing your neighbors. Even if it's your neighbors that are committing the crime, maybe they'll say, well, I really like Miss Nancy next door, and I'm not going to, if you know the kids next door, the teenagers next door, and they like you, maybe they'll be less likely to even do some, minor vandalism or something like that. Getting involved, things that, you can do specifically. Get involved if you've got a community council. That's a great way to know your neighbors and to even talk about some of these other things and sort of share them with the community. Really great things you can do if you're into kind of using the computer or social networks. There's a really great website called nextdoor.com. And if you haven't used that before, I suggest you go check it out. And it is a really great tool, especially if a lot of folks on your neighborhood are on there. I know I'm a part of it in my neighborhood, and it is, I've heard people say they don't like it. When you sign up, you do have to put in your address, and they will actually verify it. They'll actually send a postcard to your address because they just want it to be folks in your neighborhood that you're kind of connected with. But what it does is there's little subheadings of crime and safety, and there's things where if you're trying to get rid of something for free, or there's a lost and found, or just community updates. And so occasionally I'll get an email during the day. Sometimes it'll just be big dog, big white dog running down the street. If it's yours, it's loose. And we find a lot of lost pets that way, apparently, so it's helpful for things like that. But sometimes, too, we did have a graffiti issue, and we were able to kind of, through that, somebody said, hey, I've got graffiti here. I saw, there were some people, and how do we get in contact with the police? And somebody else said, oh, we've already been in contact with the police, and this is what's happening. So it just kind of gives you another way to interact with your neighbors and kind of see what's going on. Now, it certainly does not take the place of getting to know them face-to-face. I recommend that over anything because that just can't be beat. As far as neighborhood safety, really one of the best things you can do is just know your neighbors. And it builds a strong community, and folks are really going to look out for each other. And as far as folks looking out for each other, of course, if you don't have a neighborhood watch or a block club, those are things that can be very effective or helpful. It doesn't have to be, anything overly intense, where you're walking the beat every night and taking turns with your flashlight or anything. But just having a number or a point person to call can be very effective. That if you see something, and often now if you have a neighborhood police officer, I'm sure if you ask them to get involved, if I see something going on in my neighborhood right now, who can I call? Or if I do see somebody walking down the side of Miss Nancy's yard where that doesn't look normal, if I know her or she's part of the neighborhood watch, or I can call the neighborhood watch person and say, hey, can you just, maybe it was some kids, maybe Miss Nancy locked herself out and she's trying to climb in her own back window. It could be something crazy, but just to kind of have that presence of, if something's happening, what do I do? So I don't just sit there and twiddle my thumbs and say, somebody else will take care of it. Just kind of that chain of command. And again, participate in any community events and your community councils. Sometimes I'm shocked. I'll go to community council meetings and there can be very few people there, or even ones where there are a decent turnout. Still, the communities are much bigger, and decisions really do get made there. So often, if you show up, you really do get to be part of the decisions that are made, because they're not, a whole lot of people aren't showing up to vote generally. So I always advocate going to those because it's a great way to get your voice heard. Often police and fire might show up, or you can, if they don't show up regularly and have a standing appointment, you could always invite them and say, these are some things we talked about, or what can we do, or how can we be better partners so that we can kind of stamp out these problems. And part of being involved in your community goes to this next one of land use and community design. Now, certainly there's not really anything you can do on your own property to change the land use or the design of your community unless you're interested in changing your own zoning or anything like that, which I don't think any of us want to do or would even be possible. But this is about the distribution, location, and amount of land for various uses, their density and intensity, and the design elements, strategies, and overall character of a planning area. So while there's certainly not really anything you can do on your own property, there are a lot of opportunities to participate in this kind of thing with your community council or other kind of oversight organizations. Things that you can really encourage are mixed use. If somebody comes to your community and says, it's going to be great, we're going to put in this entertainment district and it's going to be a street and it's just going to be bars on all sides. We're going to have 30 new bars of all different types. And so, you know what? I don't know that we want that. That doesn't sound very great. That doesn't sound like it's going to bring a lot of really positive things happening in the evening along that street. So mixed use might mean it's sort of like that traditional Main Street feeling where maybe there are a bar or a pub here, but there's also the grill, there's the library, the post office, the hardware store, things like that that really kind of bring a lot of folks, so that if there are establishments that might bring folks that aren't always from your community or aren't always there, maybe with the best of intentions, that there are still going to be a lot of other folks around and there's going to be other eyes on the street to kind of keep those neighborhoods in check. So that is something that really we do have some say over in our communities. So again, really please get involved with your community, because you really can make a difference. Okay, so target hardening is our next one. And this is the one, to me, that's sort of like the most the most traditional thing we would think of when we think of crime prevention. And that certainly is that no matter what we do, there are still some things we should do to, kind of be practical. You can't say, well, my lawn is neat and tidy and there's not trash, so I'm never going to lock my doors and I'm going to leave all my windows open and put my giant TV right in front of the door and nobody's going to take it because I have a nice yard. And that's just not always going to happen. Certainly, things will happen. So we're going to talk about the making of potential targets resistant to criminal attack. So again, or if you have, sometimes I know we've got hills here, or depending on where your neighbor's house is located, you really just might have some dark corners on your property. Which some great things to do are the use of motion lights. Those can pretty easily scare someone away. It's nicer than having your light on all the time, especially if it's near your bedroom or something, sleeping at night, or even your neighbors. You just don't really want to have those bright lights over your whole yard all night. It's not very nice to your electric bill either. So something like a motion light that just, if someone happens to say, ooh, this is a nice dark corner, as soon as they get back there, it will no longer be a nice dark corner. And hopefully they will leave. But also simple things like locking your doors. It's a lot harder for someone to break into your house or to do something wrong if your doors are locked. So while, again, it's sort of simple, but, let's not give them the easy way in, I guess. So locking your doors, it's okay. It doesn't mean you're a bad neighbor. It just means you're practical. I like to think I make sure my pets stay in and everybody else stays out. I don't know. I'm sure if I left the door unlocked, the cats would find a way to open it and run away. So who knows? But also, again, these similar things can be applied to businesses. Motion lights are a really great option all around, so for yourself and for businesses. Also, if they do feel like they have a need for cameras, that is something that's okay. Again, certainly we don't want to just go blanket your whole community in cameras. That's not what this is about. But certainly there are going to be some places that are going to be more likely to experience criminal activity than others. And that's okay, because then someone might say, they've got cameras there, so that's certainly a dark alley that I don't want to commit a crime in. And that might be the only dark alley in town, and now we've taken away all their options. So very simple one. Okay, and then this one I have to say maybe is one of my second favorite after activity support, because I think this is what communities know. Folks, we know about our neighborhoods and what we really want, and this is natural imperative. And this is ensuring access to necessary goods and services, including natural light, clean air and water, healthy foods, physical activity, employment, and housing. And this, again, is something that you can really do with your community, because really if you think about folks that are committing crimes, or maybe why they might commit crimes, other than aside from maybe a traditional teenager just being a teenager, folks that have a lot of their needs met, if you've got a good job and a good home and you've got enough to eat, you're probably not going to say, I'm just going to go out and commit some crimes tonight, because you've got other things going on. You're involved in your community and you've got meetings, or you just want to relax after a long day at work. So I know I found in talking with folks in the community is when we do talk about crime prevention, this is what I hear is we want job training. We want folks in our communities to really be able to get jobs, and not just, a simple job or an overnight job or something like that. We really want jobs where we can support ourselves and have a good life, and they want training. We've had interview training and things like that, so you can really get the kind of job that you want and you can support your family with. And that can offer things like benefits. Like those are really important or great opportunities to have in a job. Also just communities with sidewalks and parks and things like that. Being outdoors or even just having a nice looking community to live in can really make a difference to a person. It can be the difference between I live in a nice place that matters and where I live matters, or I live in this place on the edge of the world that doesn't really matter to anyone and no one's taken care of, no one's looking at, so why should I really care about properties and people's homes if nobody cares about mine? And then also food. Again, people that are just well cared for and generally happy and healthy aren't going to be the ones committing crimes. So this is a great way for you to go into your community, or if you, as you work maybe with Mary Ellen here, talking about some grants and things like that, is that all of these things, all of the different aspects of sort of health and happy, healthy communities, even though it might not be directed, a lot of people don't think of having a job as being healthy, but it really can be. It can provide you with a lot of opportunities. And provide your neighbors with a lot of opportunities that they might not have otherwise had. So everything, even fresh air. It's hard to be upset and want to commit crimes when it's a beautiful day and you're sitting in a beautiful spot with some great food and friends. So that's kind of my final thought on that is just being a great community and good neighbors and having friends and family can do a lot. And I think that was the last one. So this is what I wanted to leave with you all. Some of you might have downloaded it already, but this is just a snapshot of what the overview PDF looks like. And there is a back side to it, but I'm just kind of showing you the front. And I certainly cannot take credit for it. I found it online when I was first learning about CPTED. When I first started reading about it, some of the concepts were a little bit strange, and a lot of folks can define them in different ways, so it's not set in stone, these 10 key ideas. But the way this was laid out, I really felt like it was helpful and it was easy to understand. And also I took it to a lot of communities and shared it with a lot of folks, and I got a lot of good feedback that, yeah, this was sort of easy to understand, and they kind of gave some good examples, and it explained it very clearly. So I wanted to share that all with you. I believe it's from the American Planning Association, although I went back to the website where I got it and it was no longer up. So if you do want it, certainly please download it from here. And I think that is all I've got for you. So that's me there and some of my contact information. Certainly feel free to contact me if you have any questions. Or I'm sure you can contact Mary Ellen as well, and we can figure something out for you. So I guess with that, we'll see if anybody has any questions.
Awesome. Thank you, Ellen. And as I'm unmuting you guys so that you'll now be able to talk, I guess the first question, Ellen, is as the community members leave this today, do you have a recommendation of if they really enjoyed it, they think these are things they want to do in their community, what's that next first step in terms of implementing some of this?
Gosh, a next first step. Well, there could be a few. The first one is talk to your neighbors about it and see if they kind of want to be a part of it with you. This is a great thing to do as part of a community. Also, if you have a community council,
all attendees are muted and may unmute themselves by pressing *6.
Can you all hear us? Can.
Should be able to.
Okay. But yeah, so first steps would be talk to your neighbors about it, and certainly I think this webinar was recorded, so you can go ahead and so you can go ahead and share the link with folks or talk about it. Feel free, go to your community council and talk to them about it. They might be interested and say, is this something we could do as a community, and what can we really do to kind of get this underway? Also, if you have, again, a neighborhood police officer or just the police in general, talk to them about it and say, again, this is something that we'd like to do in partnership with you. We know that you all are busy and have your hands full, and we as a community want to step up and do our part. to help kind of prevent the crime. So let's be partners in this and kind of see where that goes. So those would be my first 3 recommendations: is talk to your neighbors, because we should just talk to our neighbors anyway. Go to the community council and talk to the police.
Great, thank you. Are there any other questions for Ellen before we wrap up today? Awesome. Well, as you kind of go back and digest this information, feel free to reach out to me, Mary Ellen at the Health Department, or reach out to whoever your We Thrive Health educator is, and they can get you in contact with Ellen as well, or try to connect you to potential resources. So I thank you guys for joining today. I believe as you close out, there should be an evaluation that pops up. If you don't mind taking a minute to fill that out, we greatly appreciate it. If you have suggestions for other topics for webinars or training opportunities you would like to see or that could be beneficial for your community, please also share that with your health educator as well. So have a lovely day. Try to stay dry in the rain that's coming tonight, and we will talk to you guys later. Thank you.
Thank you all.